If I may ask the City Council for approval, I would like to move up item 8E, which is the North Hollis Utility Undergrounding Assessment District, as there are people here to speak to that. I realize there may be people here also waiting for other items, but I think it would behoove us to move that up if that's okay. Looks like that's okay.
Mayor West, members of the City Council, this is a topic that we were discussing at the last City Council meeting. Staff is recommending that we move forward with a process of forming an assessment district to pay for undergrounding of the overhead utilities in the North Hollis area. The City Council didn't approve the resolutions we had before them, but we were requested to bring the item back with more information. Back in 2006, the City Council approved the CIP, a 5-year CIP, and one of the projects in there was to investigate undergrounding utilities in the North Hollis area. As it was written up in the project description, we were to pursue to see whether or not an assessment district would be a way of financing it, because the city didn't have the funds available to do all the undergrounding that we would like to do. In September of 2008, the City Council approved a $31,000 contract with Harris to perform the study. And the study was considering undergrounding in the commercial areas and what we identified as the north zone, the central zone, and the south zone. The south zone is actually an area south of Powell. The north zone has essentially 146 property owners, 60 parcels with 111 condominium units. Central zone had, which was the largest zone, had 21 property owners with 32 parcels, bigger parcels. And the south zone has 6 property owners with 8 parcels. This map gives a little explanation as to how we came up with these zones. The yellow lines, the yellow highlight on the map here indicates areas that have already been undergrounded. A lot of this area west of the railroad was undergrounded with an assessment district, the West Emeryville Assessment District. As well as the area to the south, we did some undergrounding with the Bay Shellmound Assessment District. Areas to the south on Palace Street, on Hollis Street, as you all know, everything south of Palace Street pretty much is undergrounded. Those were paid primarily by Chiron at the time, and then Pixar helped, and then the redevelopment agency actually put in some funds as well. But you can see we left the little island here of poles that are still up. And then this central zone here is bounded by this yellow area, which is Doyle Street. The redevelopment agency did a project on Doyle Street and used agency funds to pay for this undergrounding. And then we've got this undergrounding here on 65th Street, which was primarily paid for by developers. You had the Courtyards project, which did all of 65th and this frontage here on Hollis Street, and then the Glass House project, which did all the undergrounding here on 65th. So as you can see, we've got 3 distinct areas that we created and we did some study on. This area here to the north, or to the east, excuse me, these are all primarily residential, single-family resident properties in Emeryville. We actually brought this item of undergrounding to the Public Works Committee. And at that time, we were talking about the entire project area, and we had residents there from the north zone. We had property owners from the central zone. Nobody was there from the southern zone. We talked about various, we had a presentation for the committee, and at that time, the residents in the northern zone were in favor of undergrounding, but they weren't too sure about an assessment district. But the property owners from the central zone were in favor of an assessment district. There was a lot of deliberation at the Public Works Committee meeting, and at that time, the committee directed staff to even expand the area to include all the residential properties in this area, which essentially would have undergrounded everything in Emeryville east of the railroad tracks. At that time, we didn't have any budget to move forward with expanding the study. It would have taken a $10,000 contract amendment to do that expanded area, study that. But given the large capital cost to do that project and the large number of residents that were there or property owners, it would be really difficult to gain 50% support for even moving forward with studying or with forming the district. So and the price for that, just for the expanded area, was going to be over $10.5 million. And so at that time, we didn't move forward with expanding the study. So undergrounding is expensive. Historically, we've paid about $450 a linear foot to do it in the late 90s, early 2000s. When we did our study, we estimated it at about $650 a linear foot just to account for some inflation. But we just completed Park Avenue, and we're noticing that our costs have come into more like $925 a linear foot. So we've updated the costs in our study to reflect this. And I'm thinking it's a lot of this price increase is due to inflation, but also the environmental requirements have been, were more relaxed when we were digging in the past. And there's a lot more testing that gets done, and the cost for disposal is a lot more than it was earlier on. So that's part of the reason why I think the price is so much higher. The property owners in the commercial area in the central zone have submitted a petition. They want to move forward. They're interested in proceeding with undergrounding. In order to proceed with forming a district, you need to have at least 5 property owners making up at least 50% of the land area submit a petition. And we've received a petition from 7 property owners, making up 48.7% of the area. The city has 3 parcels in the central zone, making up 5%. So there's an opportunity to move forward now with doing some undergrounding in a very large area of the city. If the city decides that it wants to pursue that, we would have to sign the petition to make it over the 50% mark, and then we could legally move forward with a process to form an underground district. The petition is for the central zone, and this is pretty much the boundary here. There's 21 property owners. The city owns 3, and essentially the fire station, and then the Doyle Hollis Park is made up of 2 separate parcels. And this is the estimated budget if we were to move forward with an assessment district, about an $8.3 million assessment district. And so the question becomes, what about undergrounding in the northern zone? The northern zone is a big enough project that it can stand as its own assessment district, but we need further study on that to see if we wanted to go forward with that. We would need to further study to see what assessment methodology would be acceptable to the residents. During our review of the studies that we had, there were some questions as to whether or not that was the right methodology for them. So based on our completed study that we've done to date, it's about a $5.4 million project to underground everything in the northern zone. And the city's share would be about a $400,000 general benefit for that work if we were to move forward with a separate district. So we met with residents of Oliver Lofts about a week and a half ago, and they're interested in undergrounding there, and they'd like to see the city study the possibility of another separate assessment district in the northern zone. And it could be done in parallel with working on a district in the central zone. The city could host meetings with the northern zone property owners, and we could do some public outreach and try to figure out what size of district would be acceptable within the northern zone. So if we wanted to do that, we're thinking that could be done in parallel. We've done public noticing for both the meetings. The meeting we had last week, we noticed, and the meeting today, we noticed both areas, the northern zone and the central zone. And up till now, we've received about 6 responses from property owners concerned about the potential assessment district, and we received an email from Rule. So our staff recommendation is for the central zone is to proceed with the process to initiate the formation of the central zone assessment district, and to retain the engineer to lead that process and to direct the city manager to sign the petitions on behalf of the city so that we can move forward with the process. And for the north zone, we're thinking that with the same contract we have with Harris, we could further study what it would take to pursue a district in the northern zone. We could perform outreach for the property owners, and we could try to size an assessment district that would be acceptable to the property owners. And then once we know what it is, we would have the owners circulate a petition to see if there's adequate support. There's financial considerations to consider. At this point, to move forward with that approach, it would cost about $52,000 to do the study, to form the district and to further the study. I believe the portion for doing the central zone district is about $47,000, and that would be refundable if we later actually form the district. We would need to retain bond counsel and financial advisory to be able to sell the bonds, and the amounts listed here would be only paid if the bonds are actually ever sold. So the impact for the city, if we do this, would be for the central zone is about $1.6 million. There is about $454,000 that would be the city's special benefit on the district. There's $700,000 in general benefits that we would have to come up with. And then the post office has work to be done. And we probably would have a hard time getting money from the federal government on this assessment district. So we would have to budget to covering that, even though we would send them the bill and hopefully they would pay. For the northern zone, if we were to proceed with a district eventually on that, it could, if we did the whole thing, it would be about $400,000 in general benefit that we would have to consider. So our recommended resolutions to move forward, these are the same resolutions that we had before you last time, except for the contract's a little bit different to include the increased study, and the amount here is about $4,000 or $5,500 higher. So with that, that's my presentation. If you have any questions.
I'd like to hear from the public.
Any clarifying questions before we hear from the public?
I just have one question. Would it be your intent to, if we got approval on both these projects, to bid them at the same time? One bid package with a breakout?
Ideally, if we could get approval of both districts at the same time, you could do the design effort at the same time. The design effort is not a real quick thing. It takes close to a year. So even if we were to get started with the design soon after the formation of the district, then we could be behind, but not that far behind. I believe it's about an 8 to 12 month process to form the district. During that time, we could be doing the study to see whether or not the north zone is interested. And then if they were, then you've got another 8 month process for that northern district. But once they catch up, we could, try to sync up the design.
And just like cable TV companies that have the fiber cable out there, is there any way that we can charge back some of this cost to them because they have their, they have their boxes every place? And do we ever receive any financial benefit from the cable companies for what they do in the city? What
we've done in the past, and like we did on Park Avenue, Comcast paid the city to install their facilities. They paid us $70,000. We constructed an extra fiber conduit in the street on Park Avenue in anticipation of a fiber optics company wanting to come in. Paxio actually has come in and wants to use those facilities, and it's going to cost around $100,000. So we will get money for those in return. Yeah.
That's my questions.
Okay. If there are no other specific questions, let's open it up to the public and hear from people who came tonight to speak on this issue. I don't have any names in front of me, so if you would come forward, that would be great. And can I just see a quick show of hands to see how many people are hoping to speak this evening so that we know? Okay, great. And you will be timed to 3 minutes. You'll have 3 minutes.
Mayor West.
Thank you.
Mayor West, excuse me, if we could just ask speakers to sign the sign-in sheet over here after you're finished.
Thank you.
I'm Richard Ambrose, and I'm a longtime resident and voter at 1264 64th Street. I'm a member of Rule, and I would like more time to study everything about the plans, the implications, and so on. And I think it's a little early to move on this particular measure. I'm also an archaeologist and historian, and I'm concerned about whether any study has been done, prepared, or will be, to identify potential archaeological resources in that area. Across the area between 65th and the ocean used to have a creek through it, and that suggests a possibility of buried prehistoric resources. Also, that was Butchertown. There may be buried historic resources as well. And also in the 1860s, 1870s, that was open space farms. There were Chinese farmers in that area as well. But I don't know everything because I haven't done a major study. A proper, even though this is only a CEQA project and not a NEPA project, I think it's proper to have a historic context and a research design prepared for a big project like that. It's actually a sampling of the history and geology of Emeryville. Thank you.
Thank you. Go forward. If you would remember to sign in after you speak, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity to speak. Thank you for your time. My name is Deborah Underwood. I'm a homeowner at Oliver Lofts. I'm here speaking for Sheila Opperman, another homeowner at Oliver Lofts, as well for Bo Komar, who's a resident and HOA board president at Liquid Sugar. So our properties would be part of this potential North Zone Assessment District. And basically, I would just like to express our support for doing the financial feasibility study of the North Zone. And I would also second Maurice Kaufman's recommendations regarding the North Zone that he presented. With the results of the financial feasibility study, we will be able to go back to the residents of this zone and seek support and feedback on this potential assessment district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, my name's Scott Robinson. I'm a local property owner in Emeryville, commercial property owner, and I have been a real estate commercial broker for 25 years in the city, and I've brought a lot of mid-sized companies and still interface with those companies along Hollis. If someone could pass this out, this was...
Give it to the clerk.
Perfect. That is an email from Andy Allen, who's a property owner, could not be here tonight. Also, John Nemec, who owns quite a large parcel at 65th and Hollis, is ill and also supports Andy Allen's backing in that email you'll read. What I think you'll find in talking, I've been going around talking to owners, I've been talking to tenants along Hollis, I've been talking to even Rule has sent me emails. What I think you're going to find is that the concerns are the same with the residential community and the business community and the tenants, that no one that I have found is against the underground district. I think they would like to see it slowed down a bit, have some workshops, discussions, possibly blend it with one larger assessment district. I know you've broken it into pieces, but like Kurt just said, maybe there is a way that we can efficiently make it all one to save cost, et cetera. The other concern I have, and I am a commercial property owner myself and have been a tenant, is that I have never in 25 years seen a lease that, whether it's single net, triple net, gross lease, that will not pass these costs of assessment directly on to tenants and businesses. I read my own leases. It's right in there. Tax increase over base, gross lease, special assessment, and any kind of general assessment. So I went down to lunch at Bucci's today. I ran into my tenant, who is Ralph Gutierrez at Gasket Specialties, 62nd and Hollis. Greg Harper's attorney happened to be there. We had a nice chat. Gentlemen, are you aware about the utility district? Greg was very informed. Ralph had no idea about it. I said, per my calculations, Ralph, if I pass this on to you, comes down, it's going to be a 13th month rent for you. Or how do you feel about that? Obviously, didn't know anything about it, was concerned because of the economic times, and I think you're going to find the same thing. So one of the things I sent an email out to all of you a while back was to look if we can slow down the process. I think everybody wants the underground district. I think we can look to financing to make it more palatable to both the owners, and even if they were to pass it on to the tenants, can lower the monthly impact that will be borne by the tenants, so in these hard economic times, they don't stress and go out of business. Some other concerns my other owners have is, should an empty warehouse or warehouse have the same weighted effect in financing and cost as, say, a high-rise condo? The argument there is, I have one owner, he has a 20,000-foot building, it's vacant, and he says, Scott, my warehouse really doesn't care if there's a telephone pole there or not, versus the benefit. Lastly, and I'll wrap up, I noticed on your map, all the yellow lines in the past have been paid by developers or redevelopment money or aid. In this particular case, you're asking all the private owners of these parcels to pay for this district. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. My name is Steve Lefkowitz. I live on 66th Street in Liquid Sugar. I'm former board president the last, 4 years preceding Bo's current term. And I came tonight because I certainly understand the cost implications of this project, but I'm also the person who's called in the last two emergencies with regard to exploding transformers on the power lines in front of our property. And the last one, we had downed live wire for 15 or 20 minutes. And, it happened that no one came by. But, not only were the people who lived there in danger, but so were the public safety workers who came out to respond. And the sense that I've gotten from talking to the utility workers who've come is that the lines on the poles on 66th Street, that they simply aren't safe, and they're not confident long-term in their construction or in their maintenance. And so I've, over the years, we've lived in Liquid Sugar 8 years since the beginning, and I've certainly, moved in with the understanding that it was an unsightly thing that we could, live with. But seeing the real danger, and it's not a potential danger, we've already had 2 failures in the last 12 months, I've really come to very strongly support looking at a district for the North Zone. I think it's really important to move on, and we're talking about a series of measured steps as it is. I'm not sure that planning to slow it down makes any sense when we still have several series of assessments and planning stages to go. So I strongly urge movement on this project. I think we'll find within Liquid Sugar, there's also strong support, and I think it's really incumbent on all of us to realize that it's a life and safety measure at this point, and not merely a matter of cost.
Thank you, Steve.
Hello, it's Larry Farb. I own property on Hollis and 67th Street, and we've been property owners for about 20 years. The way I've learned of this event is that late last week I got a mailing notifying us that there was that this project was in process, and so I'm a property owner and I'm just finding out about it. I have a number of tenants in my buildings. I don't think they know anything about it because, like previous speakers said, they will be the beneficiaries of this financially. So I would urge you, to look into notifying more people. We're in the North Zone. Why I'm here, I looked down the list once I got to the city website and found the packet, and I saw our properties have multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars next to them. More probably in the neighborhood of what the whole city is contributing to the process. So I would urge you I encourage you to get more people involved, both tenants and property owners, and get the sentiment before expending so much money and find out that no one's really in favor of it, or at least, the process of how you're going to finance it, and make sure that that makes sense to the people that are going to be using it. And just an aside to the last speaker, I've owned the property for 20 years. I've never seen a PG&E problem that is being described. Thank you.
Hi, Lauren Westreich from Every Dog Has Its Daycare. I'm a little small business on 63rd Street, and just wanted to make a quick comment. I think what Scott was saying is perfectly appropriate, that there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea of doing an underground district. It's just that the financial implications can be pretty extreme for somebody in the position that I'm in, where I can't pass the costs on to my tenants because I'm the tenant. So, it's not an inconsequential amount of money, and it behooves us to pay attention to that. Thanks.
Good evening. George Martin of the George M. Martin Company. We own like 5 or 6 parcels along 67th Street between Hollis and the Marchant building. And I'm very concerned about this as well, because with the number of parcels we have, with the square footage that we own along there, we are our own tenants, we own the property, and the financial burden could be very difficult for us. I mean, these are difficult times and difficult times for the future. This is an industrial area. It is not a residential area, and while it might look really pretty, as Scott had said, I think it was Scott had said, telephone pole in front of our building really doesn't affect us particularly. But I think the process needs to, there's a lot of time that needs to be spent on this process so that we can make sure it's done right, and the financial impact to small business owners like us is not too severe. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
Well, hello. First time addressing you here at the podium. I have a few concerns about this. First of all, the process. Whenever the city discusses anything that has to do with anybody's parcels, they should be notified. There were meetings at the Public Works Committee. I think those property owners could have been notified at that time. If we have PG&E lines that are dangerous, I think we should be going after PG&E. I mean, they have an obligation to maintain safe lines in the city. I also wonder whether we want to use general fund money to do this. Maybe after January, we might have some redevelopment money available. And then I hope you appreciate the transcript I did that hopefully gave you some more information. During the transcript, I noticed that the bond council said they had informal meetings in other cities. So why don't they do that here? Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Good evening, Jeff Sears with Wareham Development. Just two things. First, I was here for the other meeting, so I heard this discussed. It may have not been covered as much this meeting, but I think what you're being asked to do is start a process that will lead to a public vote of all the potentially impacted parcel owners. They will get to tell you exactly what they think, and there could be a lot of process in advance of that vote, that you're not really deciding that this project will move forward. You're deciding to spend a little advisory consultant money so that it can go to a vote, and then you will be able to review the results of that vote and decide independent, use that as guidance, but really the final decision will be yours. And so for people who are here this time for the first time and weren't here last, I think that's important because this really isn't deciding the project will occur tonight. Second, this has already been voiced here, but we remain very interested in the city keeping itself vibrant and healthy as a physical infrastructure. And this we view as an investment in long-term infrastructure. Everyone's been very focused on PG&E's gas lines. They've been all over the city testing them. Today we had the 4th East Bay mud leak on Hollis in front of our buildings in the last 12 months. It's something we've been working with Public Works and some of the council and Pat O'Keefe to try to get the attention of these people, but there are issues. If you don't keep it current and up to date, it doesn't last forever. So this is just, I think, something where you can at least hear if the public is interested in reinvesting in infrastructure and then make that decision. So thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Please.
I think that one of the possibility of the price that the budget should reflect what the property owner pays in the assessment tax. And if there is a lot of assessment, it means that the work to be done is going to be very valuable. If the assessment is low, like an older property, then it doesn't really matter to have a telephone pole or the thing on the ground. So I would think that there should be a scale and a view of the assessment value with each property in which the price is going to be decided instead of being a blanket price for everybody. It's going to create hardship for some. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Schmidt. It was your last meeting. Good to be back. Congratulations on your new, Jennifer, on your new position. I would like to say one thing. There are 21 property owners. Right now, we're being dictated to by 7 of those property owners. I wonder how many tenants are involved in this area. Has anybody taken account of the tenants involved in this total area? Because like Scott said, this cost will be passed on to the tenants. It won't even be borne by the property owners, but it's going to be passed on to tenants. That's the way your leases are drawn up nowadays. So let's consider everybody, property owners and tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, does that conclude our public comment for now? I'll turn to the council. Ruth.
Okay, so Maurice, can you come back up here? The concerns that I'm hearing have less to do with the public benefit and you know, investing in building up our infrastructure, more to do with the actual out-of-pocket cost. So can you talk about the ways in which the cost might be amortized over time?
I would like to defer to our consultant from Harris Associates, Dennis Klingelhofer, who's this is his expertise, and he can answer that a little bit better.
Maurice, before you leave, I just have one quick question. How deep are we talking about as far as when you underground? How deep do you have to believe?
Generally, they don't go deeper than 5 feet because then you have to use shoring. But if you have to get underneath the utility, you go a little bit deeper.
Before Dennis talks, I could just answer your question briefly by what was in the feasibility study. Essentially, it's a 25-year amortization period through the bond issue. So that's how they're amortized over time. And it's a low interest rate because it's a tax-exempt bond tax-exempt interest rate on the bonds.
Thank you, Alan.
Dennis Klingelhofer with Harris and Associates. Just a couple comments, I guess, in response to some of the property owner comments. And as Helen explained, the intent is that if the assessment district were to be formed with the approval of property owners, it would be financed through the sale of tax-exempt bonds. Typically, the amortization periods, depending on the district and the financial markets, 20 to 30 years. So 25 years is a good, estimate. They are tax-free bonds, so they have a lower interest rate. Property owners have the option of prepaying their assessments during the 30-day cash collection period to avoid financing costs, although most property owners elect, just like a home mortgage, to pay it over the life of the bonds. The feasibility study really looked at the big picture. What are some alternatives, both in terms of the type of financing mechanism an assessment district, community facilities district, that could be used to pay for undergrounding of utilities if the city council elects to move forward and initiate the process of forming the district. Our next step then is to do a detailed engineer's report, which very well may result in some changes or modifications to the assessment methodology based on going out and doing a detailed look at each parcel that would be impacted by the district, what its current use is, what benefit will it receive from the undergrounding of utilities. And so, the feasibility study was, 30,000-foot look at what might occur. Doing the actual engineer's report is a detailed review of how that project would impact each parcel. Be happy to answer any other questions the council has.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from council or comments?
Yeah, can we have Maurice come up, get in the hot spot again? It's good for him. It's good for your character, Maurice. I think there may have been some misinformation that's going out. Can you clearly explain to the council and to the interested people here that this is not, the steps you're taking tonight do not form an assessment district? There's going to be a process. If this goes forward, just briefly indicate the steps that will be taken and how much opportunity there is for public input, public discussion.
I'm going to defer once again to our expert on the process.
Well, yeah, if I
Pretty good handoff, Maurice.
if I could.
He doesn't stay in a hot seat long.
And we're looking
Mayor-
for something brief here.
Yeah, Mayor, if I could draw your attention, and you can add to this, but if I can draw your attention to the scope of work that's attached to the staff report from the Harris firm on page 3, there's a task 2 called establishment proceedings. So this is now after Harris has done the more detailed work that he just described before on the engineer's report. Then there are a series of steps here that we need to go through in order to notice people what the assessments will be, to provide a meeting for property owners, and if we want to add tenants to it, we can add tenants for them to understand what the assessments are. And then there's a public hearing that follows that. Now, so that's 3 opportunities where it comes back to council for people to be able to understand the amount of the assessment and how it works. If you would like to add to that, so if you think that one property owner information meeting is not enough, we can add a second property owner information meeting. We can certainly do that. But there is that whole process that occurs after the assessment engineer has a better idea of what the methodology is going to be and the costs on a per parcel basis is going to be.
Patrick, thank you. This is what I'm trying to get across here. This is an initial step. There's a long way between an initial step and the formation of an assessment district. Lots of opportunity to have input, lots of opportunity to get accurate information rather than hyperbole. For anyone to suggest, as has been suggested by certain individuals, that this has come out of nowhere and it's something that's a rush thing, I'd have to remind everybody that back in 2007, this was part of the capital improvement program. And the reason for that is this city is an old city. Well, not compared to Rome, but it's an old city for West Coast. So we got to take a look at this infrastructure. Now, you may not have had problems with live wires falling in front of your business, but we've had other people come forward that have had these kind of problems, just like they had up at Oliver Lofts. So we've got to address this infrastructure. This action tonight is the first step. There will be plenty of time to have input, to bring up these issues, and I certainly appreciate the issues of the ancient history of Emeryville, and I thank who was that did that? Richard. I thank Richard for bringing that forward. These are the kinds of things that we'll have an opportunity to take a look at. But I would urge the council to move these resolutions, to take seriously the task we have before us of improving the infrastructure of this city to meet the 21st century. And with that, I would move both resolutions.
And I would second that.
Is there any further council discussion or input? I have a few things to say, but no, not right now. Okay, I'll take the opportunity. I'm in support actually of the first resolution, which is moving forward on engaging a contract to study this and to look at all of the options, I guess, that are possible. I'm hesitant to vote for the second one, and I'll tell you why. I'm concerned about the threshold, the 50% threshold that needs to be met, and having the city as property owners weighing in to reach that threshold. To me, it seems that it should come from the property owners, and we're already, it says, I can't remember if it's 47 or 48%, and it behooves, I think, the city to wait and make sure that there's that much support at a minimum, just to get it started. And I think there may be that much support. It's just a matter of, again, involvement, information, actually having those conversations. So, and then I would also challenge the city council. We've talked about the process and how even once a vote has been taken, it's up to the city council to decide whether to move forward or not. Well, what would we be comfortable with at that point? If it was 50% plus 1, is that good enough to move forward? And if the city actually is part of that 50%, is that good enough to move forward with an assessment district that for some properties is financially difficult? What would we be comfortable with, 70%, or is it a supermajority, 66%? If the council could have some feeling of that now, that could save us a lot of work down the line, because I feel like we can get buy-in now, we can get buy-in later, but we might as well be clear with what would be something that we'd be comfortable with in moving forward on this. And I just wanted to put that out there for the council to consider.
Can we hear from Mr. Biddle?
I would just make you aware that much of the contract services for Harrison and Associates are somewhat dependent upon the second resolution. So if you don't do the second resolution and start the formation process, much of the work called for in Harris's Associates wouldn't get started. And really it sounds like you're talking about sort of revising the contract probably for have Harris to be involved in some of the same sorts of work that we're going to have them do for the north zone. And
right, that additional $5,500 that was changed since the last contract.
Yeah, I think there's additional work for their north zone. And it sounds like what you're talking about is doing similar type of activity for the central zone.
Yeah, I think that would be a prudent way to move forward.
I call the question. Let's take each resolution separately. Call the question on the first resolution.
Yes. Good. Councilmember Asher.
Yes.
This is the first or the first and the second?
Just the first.
Just first.
E1.
E1. Councilmember Atkin.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brinkman.
Aye.
And Mayor West.
Aye.
Move the second resolution.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Asher.
No.
Councilmember Atkin.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brinkman.
Aye.
Mayor West.
No. All right. Thank you. That concludes that vote.